Frank, number 58 on your list, is one of the most nostalgic movies I've seen on this list so far. It's Matinee. Matinee is a 1993 comedy directed by Dante, starring John Goodman, Cathy Moriarty, Simon Fenton, Omri Katz, Lisa Jakub, Kellie Martin, James Villemaire, and more. In Matinee, a sleazy movie producer visits a small Florida town during the Cuban Missile Crisis to preview his new film. During this time, Gene, the new kid in town, and a monster movie fanatic, learns about life, love, and friendship. Your thoughts on Matinee are? Surely you've seen this already. Underrated and needs more appreciation. I actually have not seen this. This was my first time. I have heard of Matinee for years and just never got around to watching it. John Goodman is so great in this film, as well as Cathy Moriarty. Like, both of them are incredible. The child actors are surprisingly good in this. You know, child actors are always a crapshoot, whether you get good ones or whether you get bad ones. All of them are really good in this. Omri Katz, who is not the lead, but is sort of like one of the supporting like friends of the lead. He was in one of my favorite TV shows when I was a kid. There's a show called Erie, Indiana, which I think only lasted like one season. And Dante was like a supervising producer or something on that. But it was sort of like I would say that Erie, Indiana was sort of like a Twilight Zone for kids. And I love it. You know, so it made me really happy to see him pop up in that. I don't think that he did that much stuff. I think that he kind of did some stuff, and then like as he became an adult, he kind of transitioned out of acting. I need to look that up, I guess, and find out what his deal was. One thing that really like surprised me and made me laugh and made me kind of nostalgic and happy about this film was magazines. I mean, we do still have magazines, but not in the way that we did before the internet, and not in the way that, you know, they kind of did like back in the 1950s when this film is set. Magazines were like a huge force. You know, they were how, like, especially as a kid, that was how you got information in something that you were interested in. And the lead character, Gene, that's how he gets all of his information about the monster movies that he likes and all the people who are making the monster movies and how you make the makeup effects and all that kind of stuff. So seeing magazines and like how they were sort of a linchpin part of a kid's life at that time just made me really happy, made me feel nostalgic. You know, even when I was growing up, which is pretty far separated from the 1950s, magazines were an important thing. You know, now it's like you have the internet, you have Wikipedia, you have blogs, you can immediately go on to the internet and find any piece of information that you want. But before, it was like you would get a magazine, you had like a month or sometimes 2 months to read it, depending on how often the magazine came out, or sometimes 4 months if it was quarterly, or 3 months if it was quarterly. And then, you know, you might read it in like a week, and then you had to wait for the next magazine to come out, you know, and there was always the anticipation of like, what's going to be in that next magazine. You know, I wasn't into horror when I was a kid, so Fangoria was like not my thing, but I was into Star Trek, and like there was a Star Trek magazine, and there was also Starlog, which was sort of like, it was Star Trek, but it was also sort of like general sci-fi. And I remember like going to the grocery store and like always looking at Starlogs, you know, and Star Trek magazine. And sometimes when we would go to the bookstore, they would have, I want to say it was called Cinefex, maybe? I think that was like a quarterly magazine, and it was super expensive. It was like really like fancy too. It wasn't just a standard magazine. It was almost like a book, but it was bound in like a soft cover, and it was like super thick, and it was sold with the magazines. And it would have like articles on all these movies, you know, and the special effects, and it would like break down like how do you, you know, how this was done in like Indiana Jones, or how this was done in Star Wars or whatever. That was always a really cool one to kind of peruse. But, again, it was very expensive, so I never bought one. But yeah, and there was I think it was bi-monthly magazine called Film Comment. That was before that was before blogs and stuff existed. So, if you wanted to like read people's essays and thoughts about a film, you would get something like Film Comment, or there was another one called like Film Quarterly that came out every 3 months. Car magazines, all kinds of magazines. Sorry, this whole video has turned into a video about magazines, but I love them. A lot of them don't exist anymore that I used to read, or they're like all online and they're basically just blogs now, and there's no anticipation, and you don't have the physical object. And like, I remember I had collections of these things, I had collections of like Film Comment, and there was a British classic car magazine, and for the life of me, I don't remember what it's called now, but that one used to come out, I think it was every other month, and I had a collection of those. And I don't know, I gotta get back to the movie. I don't know why I got off on this aside. Anyway, yeah, this one, I think I liked it overall, but there was some sort of like weird things about it. I feel like it shifted tones a little too quickly. There would be like comedic scenes, and then there would be like really sort of like deep dramatic scenes, and there was no like buffer in between, because they've taken this event that happens where it's like John Goodman is like screening his new like creature feature, and they set it up against the Cuban Missile Crisis, which seems kind of like an odd choice to me, but bless them. But yeah, because of that, there was this sort of like, there's these like funny scenes, and then there's like, oh, we're all gonna die in nuclear annihilation. I don't know. It was kind of weird. Yeah, I don't know. It was kind of weird. And there were also also felt like there were some comedic scenes that to me just weren't particularly that funny. For a comedy, that's not good. I probably don't have to explain that to you, but yeah, for a comedy, like comedic scenes that aren't funny, it's like, that's bad. John Goodman is definitely the best part of all of this. The kids are fine, and but again, it's like, I don't know why you have to set it up against the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's like, I feel like those two things are conflicting. I feel like you can have a good coming of age story and not have to set it up against the potential annihilation of the human race. Anyway, maybe to some, better things. Naomi Watts was in this, which I was really surprised by. She has like a very small role. She's on screen for like a few seconds, and then she's gone. I think she has a line or two, which is weird to me because this movie came out in 1993, and her big break was Mulholland Drive, which didn't come out until 2001. And I know that I've heard her story before where she talks about that she came here and she basically like auditioned for like a decade, and almost nobody would touch her. Like she couldn't hardly get roles. And then she finally, David Lynch finally cast her in Mulholland Drive, and then her career just exploded and she became a huge star. So it's very interesting to see her as like almost like a 20-something, but probably very early 20-something, I would guess, in 93. And I almost didn't recognize her, but she was there. And John Sayles is in it because he's buddies with Joe Dante, and Dick Miller, obviously, because Dick Miller's in like every Joe Dante film, and David Clennon, who's in John Carpenter's The Thing. And every time David Clennon is in a movie, every time he pops up in a movie, I'm like, oh, that's the guy from The Thing. That's like the only thing that I know him from for some reason. So it was cool to see some of those people. Matinee overall, would I recommend it to people? Yeah, with the caveat that, like, you know, it's like a 3.5 out of 5 star movie. Like, it's mostly enjoyable. There's some weird parts to it. You know, anytime John Goodman's on screen, you know it's probably going to be good. But yeah, I would ultimately recommend it. So next up is number 59. It's The Doors by Oliver Stone. I'm just going to warn you now, Frank, that I'm not an Oliver Stone fan. So I have kind of, I don't want to say purposefully avoided The Doors because of it, but I'll just say that I, you know, have not bothered watching The Doors because of my my aversion to Oliver Stone. So, but I'm going to watch it for you. I'll make that sacrifice. Anyway, Frank and anybody else who's watching, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. And I will see you next time, and have a good one. It would help if I didn't drop everything.